Donald Trump is officially out of tricks, out of time, and out of millions of dollars. The walls haven't just closed in. They've completely collapsed on his bank account today. His desperate, pathetic attempt to stop the inevitable has failed in spectacular fashion. We are witnessing the total financial dismantling of a man who thought he was forever above the law. The Supreme Court just delivered the final blow to his ego and his massive shrinking wallet. They looked at his Hail Mary petition and basically threw it in the trash today. You can almost hear the screaming from Mar-a-Lago as the reality of this defeat sets in. This isn't just a legal loss. It's a total humiliation on the world stage. Let's look at the facts of this catastrophic meltdown because the details are absolutely delicious. Trump's elite legal team thought they could play the system one last time to save cash. They filed a rare petition for a rehearing after the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal. It was a move born of pure desperation and a lack of ground. Rehearings are almost never granted, and the court didn't skip a beat in shutting him down. This officially ends his quest to overturn the $5 million verdict for sexual abuse. But it gets even worse for the former president as he watches his money fly away. On July 9th, 2024, the court released over $5.6 million to Carroll. That includes the original $5 million award, plus over $600,000 in accrued interest. Trump is literally paying for his own lies and his own vile behavior. His lawyers from the high-priced Sullivan and Cromwell firm tried every dirty trick in the book. They even begged for an emergency stay to keep the money locked in court registries. They argued that Trump would suffer irreparable harm if Carroll was allowed to touch the money. They claimed she might spend it before his final doomed appeals were totally exhausted. It's a laughable argument from a man who constantly brags about his supposed billions of dollars. If $5 million is irreparable harm to a billionaire, the math doesn't work. Judge Eunice Lee, a Biden appointee on the Second Circuit, wasn't buying the nonsense for a second. She rejected the stay and paved the way for the money to be moved. Judge Lee ruled that the possibility of Carroll spending the money did not constitute irreparable harm. It was a cold dose of reality for a legal team used to winning always. The court basically told Trump that his fear of a woman spending her rightful judgment isn't a legal emergency. It's just a pathetic excuse from a man who has run out. But then Jean Carroll's legal team did something truly brilliant that left Trump's lawyers looking like amateurs. Roberta Kaplan, the powerhouse attorney, showed exactly what a class act looks like. Even though she was legally entitled to let Carroll spend every penny immediately, Kaplan made a move. She notified the court that the funds would be held in an interest-bearing trust. This trust will hold the $5.6 million until the Supreme Court officially rejects the rehearing. This move completely dismantled Trump's irreparable harm argument before it could even breathe. It shows that Carroll and her team aren't just after the money. They are after total justice. They are playing the long game while Trump is busy throwing a deranged tantrum. We need to roll the tape on how we got here because this victory is years in the making. Trump has used every delay tactic, every frivolous motion, and every lie to stall. Judge Lewis Kaplan, who has presided over these trials, has finally seen enough of the MAGA circus. He famously noted that Trump has been stalling for years and must do equity. Doing equity is just a fancy legal way of saying it's time for Trump to finally pay up. The justice system is tired of the games, and the judges are losing patience. This $5.6 million is just the beginning of the financial nightmare facing the MAGA leader. Don't forget about the much larger $83.3 million verdict looming. That second judgment has already grown to over $91 million because of the massive interest. Trump had to post a $91.6 million bond to appeal it. Think about that for a second. Nearly $100 million of his wealth is now tied up. It's a staggering sum of money for someone who is facing massive legal bills. The Chubb Group underwrote that bond, but they're likely sweating as they watch his legal defenses crumble. Every time a judge rules against him, the risk for his financial backers grows. Trump is trapped in a web of his own making, and the strands are starting to snap. His Hail Mary wasn't a play for justice. It was a desperate attempt to survive. Next, we are going to dive deep into the absolute civil war happening inside his own firm as high-priced partners turn on each other. The elite attorneys are starting to realize that defending this man is a career-ending disaster that will haunt them forever. The white shoe elite are in a state of absolute, unmitigated panic as the walls close in. Sullivan and Cromwell is the pinnacle of the legal establishment. Now, it is being gutted by its association with a sexual abuser. Imagine the scene inside those high-rise offices right now. This is a firm that represents the biggest banks and the most powerful corporations on the planet. They are used to winning quietly and efficiently. But today, those same partners are staring at each other with pure, unadulterated rage. They are realizing that their brand has been hijacked by a man who has no intention of following the law. Everything is at risk. Co-chairman Robert Giuffre is at the center of this storm. He reportedly gave his word to the rest of the firm that they would not get dragged into the Trump legal swamp. He was supposed to protect them. He promised that the firm would maintain its dignity and steer clear of these radioactive cases. But that promise has been shattered, and the rank-and-file partners are absolutely furious at the leadership. This is a total betrayal. They are watching as their prestigious name is attached to a defense that is failing at every level. It is not just a legal loss. It is a total reputational suicide mission for everyone involved. Elite lawyers are seeing their career trajectories hit a brick wall because they are being forced to defend the indefensible. They are realizing that history will not be kind to those who shielded a predator. The internal memos are likely flying, and the atmosphere is described as a total civil war. You have the old guard leadership trying to manage the chaos, while the younger partners fear for their futures. No major corporation wants to be associated with a firm that spends its time trying to help a man escape a sexual abuse judgment. It is a business disaster of epic proportions for the firm. And while the firm is collapsing from within, Judge Lewis Kaplan is busy making sure the outside world knows exactly what is happening. He has spent years watching these pathetic stalling tactics and games. Kaplan presided over both trials, and he has a front row seat to the constant, deranged attempts to delay justice. He knows every trick in the book because he has seen Trump use them all. In a scathing moment in July 2024, Judge Kaplan finally reached his limit with the defendant. He looked at the mountain of motions and the endless stream of excuses and decided the time was up. He stated clearly that it was time to do equity in this case. That is a powerful legal term that basically means the court is going to do what is fair and just regardless of technicalities. He noted that Trump had been stalling this case for years. And he was not going to let it continue for another second. The era of the forever delay has finally hit a brick wall. This is what accountability looks like when a judge refuses to be bullied. Kaplan's demand for equity was a signal to the entire legal world that the rules still apply to everyone, even him. But that did not stop Trump's team from trying one more desperate, pathetic move. They filed what can only be described as a legal Hail Mary petition for a rehearing that nobody actually expected to work. After the Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal of the $5 million verdict, most lawyers would have packed their bags. But Trump's team decided to double down on the delusion once again. They filed a petition for rehearing, which is a move that is almost never granted in the history of the court. It was a clear sign of a man who is drowning and grabbing air. They were begging for a second chance that they knew they would not get. It was a performance for an audience of one, and the legal community was laughing behind their backs at the desperation. While they waited for that miracle, they also tried to block the release of the $5.6 million. That money was sitting in the court registry waiting for E. Jean Carroll to collect. They claimed irreparable harm was right around the corner if the money left the court. Their argument was truly grotesque and insulted the intelligence of the bench. It was a total legal joke. They told the court that if E. Jean Carroll got the money, she might actually spend it before they could finish their endless appeals. Think about the audacity of that claim for one moment. They are worried about her spending the money that a jury of her peers decided she was legally owed. They want to control her even after they lost the case in open court. But Judge Eunice Lee of the Second Circuit was having none of it. She is a Biden appointee who knows exactly how to read a desperate legal maneuver from a mile away. She acted fast. She stepped in and rejected the request for a stay with a ruling that was short, sharp, and devastating. She made it clear that spending money is not irreparable harm under the law. If you lose a case and have to pay, that is simply the legal process at work. You do not get to keep the money just because you are planning to file more useless paperwork. Now, watching this level of systemic corruption and legal warfare is enough to drain anyone's energy. It is a constant battle to stay focused on the truth while the MAGA machine tries to lie. That is why I have been prioritizing my health during these high-stress news cycles. Taking care of yourself is a revolutionary act when you are fighting for democracy every single day in this country. I have been using these supplements to help manage the stress that comes from tracking these vile attacks on our justice system. It gives me the focus I need to break down these battles. You need a sharp mind to see through the propaganda that the regime media puts out. Staying healthy and focused is the only way we can continue this fight together against these legal criminals. With the stay denied and the internal war at the law firm heating up, Trump is running out of allies. Even the most expensive lawyers in New York cannot save him from the truth. The $5.6 million is just the beginning of the financial nightmare that is currently unfolding. The James Otis Law Group and Sullivan and Cromwell are realizing that their client is a ship. They are filing motions that have zero chance of success, likely just to satisfy the ego of a man who cannot accept defeat. It is a pathetic display of professional decay and total moral failure. And Judge Kaplan's words about equity continue to ring through the halls of the courthouse. The stalling is over, the bills are coming due, and the sex abuser label is now legally permanent. Trump's team is gasping for air, but the weight of his own actions is pulling him under. The civil war at his law firm is just a symptom of the larger collapse of everything. They thought they could bully the system forever. But the system finally found a backbone in judges like Kaplan and Lee. They are holding the line for the rest of us against this corruption. As we move forward, the stakes are only going to get higher and the numbers are going to get much bigger. The $91 million disaster is looming on the horizon like a storm. The pressure is mounting and the cracks are turning into canyons. This is the beginning of the end for the billionaire's legal immunity. He is out of time and out of luck tonight. The $91 million hammer is about to drop, and Donald Trump is physically shaking as his bank accounts start to bleed out. We are witnessing a total financial collapse that this professional fraudster never saw coming. While he cries about irreparable harm, Gene Carroll is playing grandmaster chess while he is stuck playing with crayons. Trump is staring down a total judgment that now exceeds $97 million when you factor in the mounting interest. The $5 million award was just the appetizer for the massive $83 million main course that is currently sitting in a bonded account. Every single day he fights this. The interest meter keeps running like a taxi cab in a New York City traffic jam. His legal team is currently throwing everything at the wall, but nothing is sticking because the facts are simply too grotesque to ignore. They recently filed a pathetic petition for a rehearing with the Supreme Court after they already told him to get lost. It is a legal Hail Mary from a man who knows his legacy is being dismantled brick by brick. Let's look at the receipts on this latest desperation move because it is truly a masterclass in failure. Trump's lawyers from Sullivan and Cromwell tried to argue that releasing the $5 million to Carroll would cause him permanent damage. They actually claimed he would be ruined if she spent the money before his final doomed appeal was over. But Judge Eunice Lee, a brilliant Biden appointee, wasn't buying a single word of that nonsense. She ruled that the mere possibility of someone spending money they legally won does not constitute irreparable harm under the law. It's a basic legal principle that Trump's high-priced attorneys seem to have conveniently forgotten in their panic. This is where the story gets even better because Jean Carroll and her attorney, Robert Kaplan, are absolute legends. Instead of just taking the cash and running, Kaplan notified the court that the funds would be held in a special interest-bearing trust. This move was a total tactical strike that neutralized Trump's only remaining argument. By putting the money in trust, they proved they aren't afraid of his appeals because they know they've already won. It shows the world that they are the adults in the room while Trump is throwing a tantrum in the hallway. They are holding his feet to the fire while the interest keeps stacking up in their favor. We need to talk about the internal disaster happening at Sullivan and Cromwell right now. This is one of the most prestigious law firms in the world, and it is currently undergoing a total civil war. Reports indicate that the partners are absolutely furious that the firm is even representing this disgraced former president. Co-chairman Robert Jufra allegedly promised his colleagues that the firm would stay far away from these toxic Carroll cases. Yet, here they are, dragged into the mud and suffering massive reputational damage for a client who will likely never pay them back. It is a catastrophic miscalculation that is tearing the firm apart from the inside out. Watch this clip of the legal analysts breaking down why this firm is essentially lighting its own credibility on fire. They are risking everything for a man who has been legally branded a sexual abuser by a jury of his peers. It is a pathetic display of greed and cowardice from the top brass at S&C. Trump isn't just losing money. He is losing the respect of the very establishment he desperately tries to impress. He is being exposed as a broke, desperate bully who can no longer hide behind his mountain of lies. The walls are closing in, and this time there is no escape hatch for him. The most poetic part of this entire saga is what Jean Carroll plans to do with the loot. She has publicly stated that she doesn't want to keep the bulk of this $91 million judgment for herself. Instead, she is working with experts like Rachel Harris to set up a massive foundation. This foundation will be dedicated to supporting victims of sexual assault and restoring the reputations of women defamed by powerful men. Think about that for a second, because it is the ultimate form of justice. Donald Trump's own money is going to fund the very movement that is dismantling his brand of toxic masculinity. He spent decades using his wealth to silence women, and now that same wealth will be used to give them a voice. It is a beautiful, symmetrical ending to a story that started with a horrific act in a dressing room years ago. Truth and democracy are finally winning the day against a man who tried to bury both. Judge Lewis Kaplan previously noted that Trump has been stalling this case for years to avoid the inevitable. But the judge was clear when he said it is finally time to do equity and hold this man accountable. Equity is being done today, and it is costing Trump every cent he has left. As we watch this absolute meltdown unfold, remember that this is what happens when the rule of law actually works. No one is above the law, not even a man who thinks he can buy his way out of a sex abuse verdict. The justice system is finally catching up to the billionaire's trail of destruction. We are going to keep following every single penny of this $91 million disaster as it moves into Carroll's foundation. This is the accountability we have been waiting for, and it is sweeter than anyone could have imagined. Trump is trapped, and his own greed was the bait that finally snapped the jaws of justice shut. If you are as energized as I am to see the truth finally winning, we need your help to keep this fight going. Hit that subscribe button right now, because we are on a mission to reach 7 million subscribers to fight the MAGA noise. Our community is the front line in the battle for the soul of this country. For more exclusive, hard-hitting analysis that the corporate media is too afraid to touch, join us over on our Substack. You'll get ad-free content and deep dives into the legal battles that are saving our democracy. Stay loud, stay angry, and most importantly, stay informed, because the truth is our greatest weapon.